Thank goodness it's Fragments of Silicon.
Expecting a TGIF riff, but
well, we're doing an actual show on a Friday, so I might as well use it the one opportunity I'm ever gonna get.
I mean, you could have used it last week. Like, do keep in mind
I was too tired last week.
I know. I'm like, that is the difference between a morning show and an evening show. Well, one of them. Like, but just keep in mind, for the duration, Fridays are going to be a lot more active because, Tuesdays are hassle. Anyway, yeah. Welcome to a special Friday broadcast of Fragments of Silicon, brought to you by scheduling difficulties. Mainly because, in 2 weeks, Petty goes under the knife, and really this is the only time we could do this particular show at this particular juncture. Anyway. Joining us this week is Kenny Lennon of Arc System Works USA.
Hey there.
Hey there. Yes, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Right, so since this is a alternate show, we don't have to do the rigmarole with the news and all that else, so let's jump right into the interview. We like to start out by asking the person behind the game studio, whatever, how they got interested in video games, both on a personal and professional level.
Cool. Well, I can certainly do that. For personal level, I've always been into video games ever since I was super little. I've grown up with them. I actually went to the University of California, Irvine for my undergrad in computer game science. So I did computer programming as my undergrad. So I've studied some game programming as well. In terms of video games professionally, I guess I'll sort of transition into how I got into Arc System Works titles and how I started working with the company. So when I first started at UCI, there was an event on campus, like my very first day that I went to school, where they were doing a launch event for the Persona 4 fighting game. That was like a collaboration between Atlas and the fighting game club on campus. And I just happened to wander in while I was there, like getting my dorm set up. And I had a super good time at that event. It was awesome. I fell in love with anime fighting games from there. After that event and my first year of school, I ended up becoming the president of that club. I collaborated with some other companies in SoCal that worked with Arc System Works before, notably Axis Games. They're based out of Southern California as well. We did a couple of tournaments at UCI in collaboration with them. And then through them and many weird connections, I ended up working for the American branch of Arc System Works. So they had referred me to Idea Factory first. They're the people who work on the Hyper Dimension Neptunia games. And I did quality assurance for them for a few months, and then eventually moved into customer support for Arc System Works titles. So the first thing that I worked on was BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, which is the first game that we released in North America. And from there, I got brought on as a full-time employee of the company, of one of the first members of the American branch, since it's really, really new. And I've sort of branched out into doing more marketing things, community involvement things, tournament organization, just sort of whatever needs to get done. So it was sort of a result of me enjoying Arc System Works games through the entirety of my college career. I used to compete in those fighting games as well. There's lots of great tournaments in Southern California to go and play and make some cash by competing in those titles as well. So there's a bunch of videos on me somewhere on Twitch and YouTube of playing fighting games at 2 a.m. in SoCal. But that's sort of how I got into specifically Arc System Works titles and how I ended up here with the company. So it's definitely like a dream come true to be able to work here, since I'm working on IP that I really care about and franchises that are really important to me. So there's my long-winded sort of how I got from just playing video games as a dumb high schooler to now I'm working for the company that makes my favorite fighting games. So,
like, I mean, life is strange. It's like, you know, I mean, don't know really what to add to that. So
that's a different studio.
Yeah,
definitely a different studio. It was a lot of, I worked with the Axis guys and they knew people at Idea Factory, and so they gave me a referral there to start working there after I graduated. And then the Idea Factory people happened to know somebody who was working at our System Works, and so just a big giant, like, I'd have to do a flow chart of, oh, this person knew this person and I did this event with them in that favor, and after a few years it just sort of ended up happening. So
I can understand the value of connections.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, you know, it helps with this program, let's just say. But
yes.
Anyway, how many people are working at Arc System Works USA currently?
Not a whole lot. There's only a handful of us at the moment. We're pretty new. We also are looking for people at the moment. We have had a job opening for a while for a secretarial position for somebody who's bilingual to help us communicate with the Japanese office. So we're really, really small at the moment, and are definitely looking for people to jump on board. So if you happen to be bilingual and living in SoCal and have an interest in anime fighting games, check out our careers page. I guarantee we'll still have some things either still listed or in the near future for more people to be on board.
I mean, Gollix, if you weren't on the other side of the country,
that'd be a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Definitely be a little bit harder.
Yeah. He lives in Maine, so.
Gotcha.
Literally the opposite side of it.
About as far away as physically possible.
Yeah. But he is our linguist here. Like, he has made us painfully aware of it.
I'm not actually super fluent, but I'm a little bit conversant, at least. So, yeah, but yeah.
Anyway, I'm like, right. So, moving into Kill la Kill IF, or, well, Gollix, do you want to explain the title here? Or
so the
title, it is if.
It is if.
It's a pun in Japanese. It's ihu. It's written with a kanji that mean like another cloth or something.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way of putting it. Cloth, super important to Kill la Kill, to show very much about clothes and sometimes the absence of clothes. The story mode for the game revolves around Satsuki, the rival character in the anime. It's basically telling her side of the story, and so it's sort of like a what-if scenario based on the anime of what does this story look like from Satsuki's perspective instead of Ryuko's perspective. So if you're a fan of the show, you're getting this other viewpoint of the events that transpired during the show. So I think the title is sort of a play on that, of this is the what-if scenario, and like someone said already, it's like a pun in Japanese as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I don't think it's it's an alternate story, as opposed to say like a side story.
Yeah, for sure. It's still being written by the same team. The head writer is the same as the one who worked on the show. But it's definitely a lot of... You'll see events that happened in the anime from Satsuki's perspective, and then a couple of other events that you didn't get to see in the show as well. It sort of expands on the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose the question that comes to mind right now is, how did this collaboration first come about?
So, I wasn't on board with the company at the time when those talks were first happening, but a lot of the time for collaborations like this, the licensee comes to us first and asks if we're interested in making a title with the property. So we've done a couple of other but collaboration works before, right? We've had Persona 4 Arena back on like the PS3. We recently did Dragon Ball FighterZ with Bandai Namco, and a lot of times like that, it'll be the person who owns the IP that wants us to create a title based off of that property. So while I wasn't around for when that first started, my best guess would be that Trigger came to us and expressed interest in doing a collaboration.
makes sense. I mean, I'm not sure if there was anywhere else to go in terms of like Kill la Kill. Like,
I definitely think Arc System Works is sort of like the de facto, or at least the most recognizable brand in anime fighting games, and so I could definitely
specifically spectacle fighting, where like a lot of it is on having really fancy, detailed visuals.
Yeah. For fans of our titles like Dragon Ball FighterZ or Guilty Gear Xrd, the graphical style is really similar too, where I feel like it's really good at transferring 2D characters into 3D. So.
Right. Not just on the anime fighters, but like Guilty Gear Zerd, however.
Yeah, Xrd.
Yeah,
it's a weird title. So yeah, I totally understand.
I mean, that isn't based on any actual properties, but it's got the same kind of detail, I guess.
Yeah, that was like our first foray into doing like a true 3D like version of our previous titles, because a lot of those moves are taken from the old 2D games but translated into this 3D style.
And for things like Dragon Ball FighterZ, that was pretty recent, there's a whole lot of visual cheating in there on the 3D level to make it look exactly like.
There definitely is. If you go and break the camera by like modding it or whatever, and you see like characters like appendages grow and shrink when the camera angle changes. So
having there's a studio definitely with experience with getting the look right is really helpful.
To be fair, that is a principle of animation, squashing spreads.
Yeah, but it's a lot harder to do in 3D than it is in 2D.
I know. I know that. I'm just saying that's a good thing that they have. It lends itself to the whole mimicking 2D's artwork, which is not the easiest thing to do.
And on that note as well, I think one of the things that a lot of the Dragon Ball fans enjoyed about that title was most of those attacks, if not all of them, are ripped straight from the manga or the anime for Dragon Ball. There's tons of like comparison videos online of like, oh, this attack that Goku does is taken straight from this episode of the show. And I think that a lot of the Kill la Kill fans are going to have the same experience with this game. Well, where a lot of the attacks and specials that the characters do in Kill la Kill If are taken straight from the show. And so if you're a fan that wants to go and do cross comparisons, you're going to get a lot out of it, I think.
Has that happened yet? Like, have people on the YouTube or whatever broken down the attacks and compared them, or they?
I haven't quite looked yet. I'm waiting for post release for people to be able to sit down and get the camera angles right and everything. But I would not be surprised if that happens, since even as someone who I watched the anime when it was airing back in like 2014, which I think is the last time that I saw it in its entirety. And even I was recognizing like, oh, I remember when she did this in the show, or this is the pose that Satsuki does like when she's standing on top of the school, like lots of stuff like that, which is really cool.
Right. Now, it is worth noting that this game isn't specifically being developed by Arc System Works. It's being developed by A+ Games.
That's correct.
Who are the ones who did that Little Witch Academia game not too long ago. Like, I suppose what I'm wondering here is, what are they doing and what are you doing on this title?
So, to my understanding, the relationship right now between us and A+ is that A+ is the developer of the game, and Arc System Works is overseeing the project. And so a lot of the graphical style of the game is coming from Arc System Works and our involvement, along with the balance of the game. I think that a lot of Arc employees are sort of lending their expertise onto that as well, since we have a lot of experience in balancing anime fighting games and things of that nature. So while the core development team is A+, a lot of the project oversight is done by Arc System Works, and we're also publishing it in North America, as well as Japan.
And if I'm recalling correctly, Europe is being handled by PQ Games, correct?
Yes. Yep. PQ is handling it in the EU region.
Yeah, I know there's been some concern about the developer here because, they're not renowned for fighting games. Because the Little Witch Academia video game was kind of something out of Vanillaware.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. I can understand that a little bit of nervousness since it's like solely being developed by Arc System Works, but from my experience of people that I've been speaking to at events, because we've been taking this game to a lot of fighting game community events as well. So there's tournaments in North America that we'll demo the game at. There's lots of people who play games like Ninja Storm, like the Naruto series, the My Hero Academia 3D fighter, that have been coming over and telling us that the game feels great, that the game controls really well and feels smooth to play. And so I think that once people get their hands on the game, it's definitely a lot smoother than I expected, especially since Arc doesn't do a whole lot of 3D things either. I myself, when I first got my hands on it, was surprised at how natural and smooth the game felt.
That's good to hear. That's good. Hopefully it'll allay some fears.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And with an oversight role, you'd still at least be in a position to note if something was off, and that's almost as good as doing everything from scratch.
Yeah, I'm almost positive that members of the Guilty Gear dev team are like pitching in their thoughts and ideas on like the game balance. Because as well, like every time that we get our hands on a new build, they've drastically changed a lot of the game balance from version to version, which is really cool to see. Every show that we've showcased the game at, and we've gotten a new build from Japan, they've made different changes to the system mechanics or to characters' moveset that always feels for the better, and is really exciting to see for people who have been following the game at the events that we've been to as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now I should mention like the type of fighter, because if for those of you who are not watching the footage right now, it's a bit different than your traditional one-on-one fighter. Like I'm not sure if the subgenre has a name, like maybe arena fighter.
I think arena fighter is probably like the closest. Yeah.
It's like it's closer to something like Power Stone or a game called Biofreaks, if anyone else remembers that one.
Mm-hmm.
It's like where you're dealing with like not deep combos so much.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of depth to the game's neutral. Like when you and your opponent are in the arena, both of you have a lot of movement options, a lot of attack options as well. But in terms of execution for the game, of how hard it is to do combos, it's very, very simple. It works similarly to BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, which is a game where I hit the attack button over and over again. My character will do like an auto combo string. The game works the same way, where you have like an attack button and a projectile button, and hitting it over and over again will do like a small combo. But people who have been sort of diving into it, we were just at a tournament in Houston called Texas Showdown, where we had players coming over and really getting deep into the game and finding lots of crazy combo routes. So there's definitely depth to the combos, but they're not very hard to pull off.
Yeah. From what it seemed like, from what I'd read about it, it seems like a lot of the mechanics is based on basically like a series of different types of moves that have rock paper scissors style relationships, like a regular attack, a guard, and like a guard break attack. Mm-hmm. But then instead of going in that one, you can instead dodge instead of guarding, and then there's a different thing that prevents dodging.
Yeah, so that's definitely a good way of putting it.
There's a lot of. It seems like there'd be a lot of a mental game there, where the hard part is like trying to figure out what your opponent's going to do, rather than like, oh my god, I got to do like 3 whole circles on the control stick and then push 4 buttons in like 2 frames.
There's no crazy like motions that you have to do on the controller or anything. Like the most complicated inputs we'll get is if you hold up on your controller and hit attack, you'll do an attack that hits high up in the air. And if you hold to the left or right and do an attack, you'll do an attack that sort of sweeps in a circle around you. So it's good for catching people who are trying to sidestep. So there's definitely that rock, paper, scissors game too, where they're blocking. So I'm going to do my guard break attack, and then the opponent can decide to dodge it instead. So there's definitely a lot of rock, paper, scissors mechanics that happen, just like any fighting game, with like the attack, block, throw sort of mix-up options that characters have.
So the controls for this would be more, you'd want a regular like PlayStation or Xbox controller instead of a fight stick.
Yes, I think it plays much better on a regular PlayStation 4 controller or whatever Switch Pro controller you have, since it's on PS4, Switch, and PC. But I do think it plays best on a standard controller.
I can definitely see that. The overall point trying to emphasize here is don't go into this game expecting Dragon Ball Fighters. It's not that kind of fighting game.
It's definitely not. There's depth there if you want to take it competitively and really dive into it, but it's also a super good, I'm going to have a couple of beers with my friends and mash this game for 4 or 5 hours on a weekend. There was a new build where it was me and a buddy of mine who goes by Octopimp. He's a streamer. We're playing the game on the Arc System Works stream, and we are laughing so hard that we're almost crying. And that is super genuine. Like, we're just having a genuinely really fun time playing the game and learning it. So I don't think you have to be really worried about coming into it and expecting it to be really hard to pick up or complex, because it's made to be accessible for new players.
It'll probably be hard if you go online and try to fight, like versus with people, but that's true.
Oh, yeah.
Like any fighting game ever, even like Smash Brothers, if you just go on random match online,
Totally, yeah.
you're gonna get your face wrecked.
I think Smash Brothers is a really good comparison, where it's a game that anybody can play, but if you want to take it seriously, there's definitely a lot of depth to it.
Indeed. And how is multiplayer set up? Is it local, online, both?
So there is a local. The game isn't split screen. Like, the footage you're seeing, that's what it looks like, both offline and online. So it looks a little weird because if you're playing the character who's in the background instead of the foreground, you might be worried about the camera. But in all the time that I've been playing it, it's always felt really natural. You're always just controlling wherever your character stands, and the camera does a pretty good job of framing all the action. So the game looks the same offline and online, so you don't have to worry about, if I go in offline mode, now the game is split or whatever. There is a player match mode where you just play other people for fun online and can make lobbies, and then there's also going to be a ranked mode where you can play and earn ranking points.
Looks like I'm seeing for the Switch version, TV and tabletop are 1 and 2 players. Handheld is only 1 player, which, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. You can't have more than one controller connected. Yeah. And there's no like local multi-system multiplayer.
No, there's no LAN mode. For the game, but there will be player lobbies.
Otherwise it looks like it's online.
Yes.
And stuff. So yeah.
Now, in terms of ranked mode, or just the game overall, is there any sort of like loot system, cosmetic system that is tied to that?
There's a ranking board, but I don't believe there's any like alternative costumes that you're going to be able to unlock or that sort of thing. It's mostly like to level up your rank and play against better players as you play online.
Okay, so like how this stuff used to work.
Yes, there is a gallery mode where you'll be able to like view like music from the game, like character models, and then it also has the same feature as Guilty Gear Xrd, where there's a figure mode where you can pose the 3D models to do like screenshots and that sort of thing. And so some of that stuff will probably end up being unlockable as you progress through either the story mode or online. But in terms of like different characters and stuff, the trailer that we have playing right now is going to show off some of it as well, where you can pose different models to do like, fun shots and stuff. You can replay matches from your online. So that stuff will definitely be there to mess around with.
That's good to hear. And what other modes are there besides, rank, multiplayer rank modes and story modes and all that stuff?
There's horde mode as well. So in the story mode, you'll be fighting more than one opponent at times. You'll either be fighting like multiple playable characters, or if you see in the anime, there are like enemies that look like suits. Like they're like the white suit enemies. You'll fight a bunch of those at once.
They're called.
Yeah. You'll fight like a horde of covers at once, and there's another mode where you do those sorts of challenges where you have to fight a big horde of enemies with your character. And so there's definitely some other single player modes besides, just the story mode. There's the training mode, so you can lab your combos and practice things, as well as that horde mode as well.
Right. I mean, I think it was not. It was recently announced that there's going to be another story mode.
Yes, yeah, that's another thing to be noted as well. That once you clear the first story mode, which is told from Satsuki's perspective, you'll unlock even more single-player story mode content behind it.
So it's not just Ryuko who's getting another story mode here.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be. I don't want to spoil too much about it for people who are excited for like the new story content there, but there's definitely more than just the core Satsuki story. You'll unlock other episodes after you finish the main story as well.
Interesting. And in regards to the main story, how long would you say that would take to complete first time round?
Let's see. It took me a while to complete it because I wasn't the best, and I had trouble beating the last covers fight that I played. But the first arc of the story mode is definitely a good couple of hours, and so you'll get a lot of content out of it, I think. I'm not sure how long the total is, including the other episodes, but I remember it taking me a good, at least 4 hours to go through that first story.
I mean, that's fairly meaty for a fighting game mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's anyone who's expecting, hours and hours have never played a single player fighting mode.
Yeah, and that's just like the first one. There's going to be a lot more behind it as well.
Of course. Now, in terms of characters, I'm not sure how much you can talk about, the total amount or who's going to be in it.
Mm-hmm.
So far, all of the major characters, I'd say, have been announced.
Mm-hmm.
You got Ryuko, you got Satsuki, you got the Elite Four, Ragyo, Nue. You've got some alternative versions and so on and so forth. I mean, basically, are there characters beyond what we see on the official character page?
So right now, the only 2 additional characters we have that we haven't been showcasing at events are the ones that were just on screen right now in the trailer, which was the DTR and Fight Club Mako. So the game is going to have the initial core roster of Ryuko and Satsuki, Satsuki's 4 lieutenants, Nonon, Satsuki's mom, and then the dual-wield versions of Ryuko and Satsuki. And then there's those 2 free-to-play characters that are going to come out right after launch. And so DTR and Fight Club Mako are going to be free DLC post-launch. They were essentially meant to be ready in time, but just we needed to release them as basically a day 1 patch.
Yeah, it's one of those they weren't able to be in for the disc print or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But they'll be in with right after launch. They'll be free content, so you don't have to worry about paying for them or anything like that. And that's currently the full planned roster for the game. I don't know if there's any DLC planned behind that. Right now, that's sort of what our focus is on.
Are there any mode changes for the main cast? Because I know sometimes anime fighting games have mode changes for the characters in them, and the anime had mode changes, but a lot of them were not particularly fighting game friendly, and several of them would pretty much require it to be an entirely different character.
Yeah, essentially. We're treating dual wield Ryuko and Satsuki as completely different characters, and so. On the character select, if you want to play as their dual version, you just hit one of the shoulder buttons, and they'll swap to the version with 2 swords. And those are completely different characters. They don't share any moveset with the single blade versions. They're entirely different. So while it's not necessarily a mode change, it's definitely an alternate version of the character. I know what you're referring to with a lot of Satsuki's lieutenants have different versions of their.
Yeah, the Elite Four each have 3 or 4 different kinds of armor, which often has very different movesets in it, and then Senketsu and Junketsu can both transform into several different environmental or combat-based forms. Plus, they have a final form and all that stuff.
Right now, we don't have any form changes like that in the versus mode. We showed off a new version of Junketsu for Satsuki. that there's no story details yet on what that is or what that'll be. But you can check out that art online too, because we posted it before. It's like an alternate, new, different version of Junketsu that's like new for the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll definitely be in the story mode, but I don't believe it's a playable character for the versus mode quite yet.
Right.
Right. What led to having the dual-wield versions become their own characters, basically, instead of, just like a alternate costume sort of deal?
So for those characters, I think that they really wanted to make sure that they felt completely different and not just like, some of their attacks change. That's like be kind of like a basic thing, where it's like, maybe their projectiles are different, but like their normal attacks kind of feel the same. Like those characters feel, animate, all their special attacks and normal attacks are completely different. I definitely felt like they wanted to give those characters a lot of life. And also, if you're a fan of the anime as well, like Ryuko and Satsuki don't attack the same when they have two weapons. Like they're going to be doing a lot of different moves in the show as well. And so
yeah, if I recall correctly, Satsuki's is with her. I mean, the two swords that Satsuki uses are her one sword broken in half.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And Ryuko has both scissor blades, probably, which makes it much harder to use execution mode since that's, two-handed.
Yeah. So I think they definitely wanted to transfer a lot of that stuff from the show over to the game, which is why they're like treated as their own unique characters.
Right.
Makes sense. Let me see here. Now, in terms of platforms, what sorts of resolutions and frame rates are you targeting for the various platforms?
So right now, I don't think we've released the specs, and so I can't comment on it too much. What I can say is that the game should perform pretty much the same on all the consoles as sort of what we're shooting for. It's not the most intensive game, so you should be able to run it on your PC pretty okay as well. So right now, our target is to have the PS4, Switch, and PC versions all perform the same. What that should be, I believe it's running at 60, but don't quote me on that if someone, calls me out on it and tells me that it's not. The last time I checked, that's what the target was.
I think there's some specs on the website, but I'm not sure.
Is there any enhancements for PS4 Pro and Xbox One X?
So it's currently not being released on the Xbox. We're just doing PS4, Switch, and Steam. But it should perform the same on PS4 and PS4 Pro. I don't believe there's a difference between those versions.
And can you speak to performance in Switch handheld mode?
Ooh, in handheld mode, I haven't gotten enough time to really dive into that as well. But in the past, we've been doing a pretty good job at optimizing for the Switch handheld mode. I remember being really surprised that BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle performed as well in handheld mode as it did, where it still ran just as well as if it was in docked mode. And so I imagine that we'll be transferring a lot of that knowledge over to the Switch version as well in our oversight of the project.
Good to hear. Now, always concerns with, the Switch version of, games.
Yeah.
2D indie title.
Mm-hmm.
But some developers get it right, some do. I'm like, not going to name names, but I've certainly seen some bad Switch ports of late vintage. Let me see here. Speaking of the Switch, is Kill la Kill going to take advantage of things like HD Rumble?
For the Switch version, I can't comment on that as well. I'm not sure what the specs are for that.
Okay. And is there going to be any sort of cross-play?
Cross-play isn't planned at the moment either. You'll be able to play with people on your platform, but no cross-play between the console versions quite yet.
What about, say, PC and the consoles?
Same deal where each one is going to be locked to its platform.
I see. Unfortunate, but sometimes that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let me see. Now, one thing I've noticed about this game is you've decided to dub it.
Yes.
Which is not a thing that happens with all anime games. Certain companies that we know and won't mention here. Like,
And it sounded like you got pretty much the anime cast for it.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool thing that we managed to do. If you're a fan of the Kill la Kill dub, we've brought back pretty much all the voice actors from the dub as well as from the Japanese version. So you'll be getting the same cast between the anime and the game as well. So all the voice actors are returning, which is really, really cool. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of
language as well, right? It's dual language as well, right?
Yes, it is also dual language. So you'll be able to pick your preferred version.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I know that you mentioned most of the voice actors returned. Are there any roles that were unable to be fulfilled?
I think there's only I know there's one character where the voice actor had a scheduling conflict and we weren't able to get them, but it was a side character and I can't remember off the top of my head who it was. The core cast of like who's playable is all the same.
Okay. I mean, you know.
So just in some of the cinema scenes, it might be like
there might be a side
club
character,
captain or something.
Yeah, stuff like that, where it's like, oh, we weren't able to get everybody due to scheduling conflicts, but we tried to get as many voice actors returning as we possibly could.
Yeah. And I suppose, like, how did you go about doing that? Like, did you contact like Bang Zoom or like the individual voice actors?
We've been talking to the licensors for Kill la Kill, so Aniplex, Funimation as well. We've been in talks with a lot of them, and they've been a big help in both with the production of the game and promotional stuff as well. And so I can definitely give a lot of shout-outs to their team. They've been a huge help in promoting the game and making this project like a reality.
That's good to hear. Again, it is good to hear that you know, they are helping out with the dubbing.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Does this game have a release date yet?
It sure does. It's coming out on July 26th in North America.
What about Japan and Europe? Well, I suppose you can't comment on Europe since you're not in that territory. But is the Japanese version coming first?
We're shooting for a simultaneous release.
Okay. Okay. Like, nice to see that. And what sort of physical releases are we looking for with the various versions?
So the PC version is only going to be digitally available via Steam, which is, you know, pretty run of the course these days. In terms of console, both the PS4 and the Switch version will get a physical release. And so if you're a fan of having, you know, discs or carts, you'll be able to pick it up physically. And we're also doing a limited edition version of the game. So it comes with the game itself and a nice collector's edition box. You're going to get an art book with the game, a soundtrack with some of the new music that's been composed for the game, and then a squish toy that looks like Mako from the show. So
it's a Mako croquette in the picture.
it's a Mako croquette is the pronunciation, which I always trip over when I say it. But it's supposed to be modeled after like the croquettes that Mako's family makes in the show.
Right.
With only 100% actual ingredients.
Yes, they are all confirmed ingredients. So you'll be able to pre-order that hopefully soon. We've been working really hard on getting that ready for fans to make sure they can snag a copy. So look up for more details on that in the next few weeks as we continue working on the limited edition.
And in terms of the music, is the TV soundtrack returning? Is it all original music? Is it a mixture of the two?
It's a mixture of the two. And so every character has a new theme for the game, where there's all new music being composed for the game that definitely sounds very much in style with the original soundtrack from the show. And then there's also returning tracks from the anime as well that play during story mode. And so you'll get to hear a lot of those like really iconic Kill la Kill tracks in the game as well, which is pretty cool.
For versus mode, is there a music select option?
There's currently a stage select, and it's auto set to the character that you're fighting as in the demo we've been showcasing. But they'll definitely include like a music select option in the final version, I'd imagine. They do that for like every single game we do. So you'll definitely be able to pick I'd be shocked if that's not the case.
And in terms of like who's doing the music, is Sawano handling the new stuff, or is it?
Unfortunately, Sawano isn't composing anything new for the title, but the team that is doing the soundtrack is doing a really good job, in my opinion, of being faithful to Sawano's original compositions.
Okay, good to hear. I'm like, let's see. I think I've asked everything I wanted to ask. I'll see if my colleagues here have any other questions.
In the story mode or anything, is there any like animations by trigger? Like any new animations, or is it just like clips from the show, or?
Everything is rendered in the style of the versus mode. So everything is being done with like 3D models. If you've ever gotten a chance to check out the Guilty Gear Exard story mode, it's very similar to that, where there are cutscenes done with the 3D models. A lot of the times it's pretty cool because they will recreate the animation style of the show. And so there's lots of sort of fourth wall breaky stuff where characters, will turn 2D or will animate by like gliding along instead of like doing an animation. And they copy some of those animation styles both in the story mode and for Nonon specifically. When she does her sidestep and backdashes,
her whole thing is that she's a cartoon character, basically.
Yeah, so. Essentially. Yeah, she like breaks the fourth wall and turns 2D and does a lot of like fun visual gag stuff. And
there's a lot of the subtitles physically exist in the world, but I think Nonon is the only one who actually literally leans on the subtitles.
Which
sometimes.
It's my favorite. Yeah, it's super cool.
Indeed. What sort of game engine is this being built on? Is this Unreal?
I believe it's in Unreal, but I'm not 100% positive because most of our current titles are being run in Unreal as well. Guilty Gear Exard was being run in Unreal, so I believe that's what it's in, but I can't say 100% for sure.
Right. It's like, I guess if there was a disparity, it'd be down to A+ games.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm recalling correctly, I don't think the Little Witch Academia game was in Unreal Engine. I don't know, it's been a while since I've thought about that game.
Yeah.
Chamber of Time was in Unity.
There we go.
Live
be interesting
Reaper.
if that's a Unity fighter. Twilight, do you have anything to add?
No, all of my questions have been answered.
All right. Well, I think we're good for the duration.
Cool.
Anyway, hopefully we'll hear more about the game in the weeks ahead.
You definitely will. There's more stuff to announce, so if you time to shill our social media, if you're not keeping an eye on our Twitter, our Facebook, I would encourage you guys to take a look there since that's where we release most of our info first. We'll have more info coming up in the next few weeks about the limited edition, more details about the game. So look forward to that in the next few months.
Right. And hopefully we can review the game when it comes out.
Of course.
Oh, good to hear. Let's see. So the game is Kill la Kill If.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be available on the Switch, PS4, and Steam on July 25th?
26.
26th, there we go.
There we
July
go.
26th at a retail price of $60 for the regular edition, and I think $90 for the limited edition, if I'm remembering correctly.
I don't think we've announced the pricing for the limited edition yet, so keep posted for that.
Yeah, I think that's just the prices I've seen for, on Amazon or whatever. So
which is retailer expected manufacturer suggested retail price for all of your mental doing dances on pricing models purposes.
That's kind of the standard regular limited edition pricing, but it's just keep an eye on the Art System Works social media for more news on those matters.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Be sure to tune in Sunday for our review session. We'll be reviewing One Finger Death Punch 2, Power Gunner, and Eternity: The Last Unicorn. Also, I'm pleased to announce we have a couple of giveaways to do during that session. We have 10 copies of Power Gunner and 2 copies of Vengeful Rights to give away.
Yeah.
Um,
If you want to
so-
get in on that, join our Discord. Link is down below.
yeah, we just opened a new giveaway section of the Discord. So yeah, it's like those codes will be deployed there. So if you want one of them, just do that when we're doing that our stuff on Sunday. So until then, I shall wish you good gaming.
Cool. Thank you guys for having me on.